Welcome to Unfiltered Reflections. I'm your host, Passion, and today we're delving into the quiet, often unseen corners of your heart. We're going to explore a landscape that many of us, at one point or another, have found ourselves inhabiting, a landscape where the shadows stretch long and the echoes of yesterday can feel overwhelmingly present. This isn't a place of grand pronouncements or easy answers. It's a journey into the intricate tapestry of human experience. A journey I hope will resonate with the quiet hum of your own inner world. Imagine, if you will, a city, not a bustling metropolis, but one that breathes with a peculiar stillness. The buildings are tall, made of a silvery gray material that seems to absorb all light, leaving the streets in a perpetual twilight. The air itself feels thin, almost brittle, and a fine, almost imperceptible dust perpetually settles on every surface. In this city, people move with a curious, almost synchronized rhythm. They walk alone, their gaze is fixed on some distant, unseen point. Their footsteps are soft, muffled, as if the very ground beneath them conspired to absorb any disruptive sound. There are no boisterous greetings, no lingering conversations on street corners. The city hums with a silent understanding, a collective agreement to exist in parallel, yet never to truly intersect. Our story begins with Alara, a woman who had lived in this city for as long as she could remember. Her apartment, high up in one of the silver towers, was a testament to this quiet existence. Each object was meticulously placed, each surface gleaming. Her books were arranged by color, her clothes hung in precise order, and the few pieces of art on her walls depicted solitary figures gazing out at vast, empty landscapes. Alara found a strange comfort in this order, a predictability that soothed the restless murmur beneath her skin. She worked from home, her days filled with the quiet tap, tap, tap of her keyboard. Her colleagues were disembodied voices on conference calls, their faces pixelated squares on her screen. They spoke in measured tones, discussing data and projections, never venturing into the messy territories of personal lives or shared laughter. Alara found this efficient, uncomplicated. It allowed her to maintain the pristine boundaries she had meticulously constructed around herself. One morning, as Alara brewed her customary herbal tea, she noticed a faint tremor in her hand. It wasn't a physical tremor, not exactly. It was more like an internal vibration, a discordant note in the carefully orchestrated symphony of her daily routine. She dismissed it, attributing it to a lack of sleep, or perhaps the subtle chill that always seemed to permeate her apartment, even in the height of summer. Later that day, a package arrived. It was a gift from an old aunt, a distant relative she hadn't seen in years. Inside, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, was a small, intricately carved wooden bird. Its wings were spread as if in mid-flight, and its eyes, tiny beads of polished obsidian, seemed to hold a spark of knowing. Alara held it in her palm, feeling the smooth, cool wood against her skin. A memory, faint and fleeting, brushed against her consciousness a childhood afternoon, sunlight streaming through a dusty window, her aunt's warm laugh. The memory was gone as quickly as it came, leaving behind a faint ache like a phantom limb. She placed the bird on her windowsill, among her collection of smooth gray river stones. It looked out of place, a vibrant splash of life in a muted tableau. For days, Alara found her gaze drawn to it, the small wooden bird a silent, persistent question mark in her ordered world. The city, despite its quietude, was not without its subtle pressures. The news, delivered in a calm, almost hypnotic voice through the city's ubiquitous public address system, often spoke of optimal living strategies and the importance of maintaining personal equilibrium. It subtly reinforced the idea that self-sufficiency was the highest virtue, that any reliance on others was a sign of weakness, a deviation from the prescribed path. Alara had internalized these messages. She believed that true strength lay in navigating life's currents alone, in being an island unto herself. She had, in her past, experienced storms that had threatened to capsize her small vessel. The wreckage of those storms, though long since cleared from her immediate view, still lay deep beneath the surface, a constant reminder of vulnerability. And so she had built her walls high, her defenses impenetrable. But the wooden bird, with its silent, watchful gaze, seemed to chip away at the mortar of those walls, one imperceptible grain at a time. One evening, as the silver light of the city began to deepen into indigo, Alara found herself staring at her reflection in the window. The woman staring back was composed, elegant, and utterly alone. A pang, sharp and unexpected, pierced through her. It wasn't sadness, not exactly. It was more like a profound emptiness, a hunger she hadn't realized she possessed. The next day, something shifted. A small, almost imperceptible crack appeared in the seamless facade of Alara's routine. She was on her way to the market, a weekly ritual performed with robotic precision. As she passed a small, unassuming cafe, a scent wafted out the rich, earthy aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingled with the sweet spice of cinnamon. It was a scent she hadn't encountered in years, a scent that conjured another memory, vivid and potent. Her mother, laughing, stirring a mug of steaming coffee, the morning sun painting streaks across their kitchen table. Alara paused. Her feet, accustomed to their unwavering path, hesitated. A tiny battle waged within her, the ingrained habit of avoidance, against a sudden, inexplicable pull. The cafe was small, with only a few tables visible through the condensation-misted window. People sat there, talking softly, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of the interior. They weren't talking loudly or laughing boisterously. They were simply present with each other. A tremor, stronger this time, ran through Alara. It was a fear, a familiar tightening in her chest, a whisper of old wounds. But beneath the fear, a different sensation stirred a flicker of curiosity, a faint, almost imperceptible longing. She walked past the cafe, but this time she didn't quicken her pace. She walked slowly, her gaze lingering on the warm light, the soft murmur of voices. It was a small victory, a barely perceptible deviation from her established trajectory. The following week, the tremor returned, more insistent. It was a Tuesday, the day she usually dedicated to deep cleaning her apartment. As she polished a crystal vase, her reflection shimmered back at her, distorted and wavering. She saw not just her own face, but a fleeting glimpse of another, a face from her past, a face associated with pain, with betrayal. She flinched, dropping the cloth. The vase remained intact, but the fragile piece of her morning was shattered. Later, she found herself staring at the wooden bird on her windowsill. Its obsidian eyes seemed to gleam with an unspoken challenge. The city's public address system droned on, its calm voice reassuring citizens of their self-sufficiency. But Alara heard it differently now. She heard the subtle undercurrent of command, the insidious suggestion that to reach out was to admit failure. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the contact list. She had so few numbers stored there, and most belonged to her work colleagues. There was one, though, an old friend named Leo. She hadn't spoken to him in years, not since the incident, the one that had solidified her resolve to build her walls so high. Leo had been there, a witness to her unraveling, and she had, in her pain, pushed him away. Her thumb trembled, hovering over his name. The familiar fear surged, a cold wave washing over her. What would she say? What if he rejected her? What if he reminded her of the past, of the raw, aching vulnerability she had worked so hard to bury? She put the phone down, but the wooden bird she imagined tilted its head, its eyes still fixed on her. That night, Alara dreamt. She dreamt of a vast, empty ocean and herself adrift in a small, solitary boat. The sky above was a swirling canvas of bruised purples and angry grays. The waves were immense, threatening to engulf her at any moment. She was alone, desperately trying to steer her boat, but the rudder was broken and the oars were gone. The fear was visceral, suffocating. Then, through the gloom, she saw a light. Faint at first, then growing steadily brighter. It was another boat, larger than hers, and on its deck figures moved, their faces indistinct. They were calling to her, their voices carried on the wind, a melody of hope. But as they drew closer, Alara found herself shrinking, pulling away. The thought of being seen, of being vulnerable, was almost as terrifying as the storm itself. She woke with a gasp, her heart pounding. The dream lingered, its imagery stark and unsettling. The emptiness of the ocean, the struggle of being alone, the strange, almost paralyzing fear of being rescued. The next few days were a blur of internal conflict. The city's quiet hum felt louder, more oppressive. The silver buildings seemed to press in on her. The public address system's pronouncements on self-sufficiency now sounded like a cruel taunt. Alara found herself taking longer walks, her feet carrying her further and further from her familiar routes. She noticed things she hadn't before. A single, tenacious weed pushing its way through a crack in the pavement. The way the sunlight, when it did break through the perpetual twilight, would illuminate the dust motes dancing in the air, transforming them into tiny, shimmering galaxies. One afternoon, she found herself back at the small cafe. The aroma of coffee and cinnamon was even more inviting today. She stood outside for a long time, watching the people inside. They weren't talking loudly, but there was an undeniable warmth in their interactions. A subtle exchange of energy that Alara, in her carefully constructed world, rarely witnessed. A young woman inside, with bright, curious eyes, caught Alara's gaze and offered a small, hesitant smile. Alara reflexively looked away. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But then, something shifted. The image of the wooden bird, its wings spread, flashed in her mind, the dream of the stormy ocean and the distant beckoning light. She took a deep breath, the brittle air filling her lungs. And then, she did something she hadn't done in years. She pushed open the cafe door. The warmth inside was immediate, a physical embrace after the cool, sterile air of the city. The murmur of voices, once a distant hum, now enveloped her, a soft, comforting blanket of sound. The young woman who had smiled at her earlier was behind the counter. Her smile widened. "Welcome," she said, her voice soft and genuine. "What can I get for you?" Alara felt a strange lightness in her chest, as if a great weight had been lifted. Her voice, when it came, was a little rusty, a little hesitant. "Just a coffee, please, with cinnamon." She found a small table in the corner, near a window that looked out onto the street. The coffee, when it arrived, was rich and fragrant, exactly as she remembered. As she sipped it, a warmth spread through her, a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature of the drink. She watched the other patrons. An elderly couple sat holding hands, their faces etched with the stories of a lifetime. A group of students huddled over textbooks, occasionally erupting into quiet laughter. A man sat alone, reading a newspaper, occasionally looking up to exchange a brief, friendly nod with the woman behind the counter. It wasn't a grand revelation, not a sudden, blinding flash of insight. It was a subtle unfolding, like the petals of a flower opening to the sun. She realized that the people in this cafe weren't performing for each other. They were simply being, present, connected. Over the next few weeks, Alara found herself drawn back to the cafe. Each visit was a small step, a tentative exploration of a world she had deliberately excluded herself from. She started exchanging polite nods with the young woman behind the counter, whose name she learned was Anya. Eventually, they started talking about the weather, about the city, about the peculiar beauty of the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. One afternoon, Anya mentioned a community garden project that was starting up on the outskirts of the city, a place where people could grow their own food, share their harvests. Alara, to her own surprise, found herself asking for more details. The garden was a revelation. It was a patch of vibrant green in the otherwise silver-gray landscape, a riot of color and life. People worked side by side, their hands in the earth, their faces smudged with soil. They talked, they laughed, they shared stories and tips about growing tomatoes and herbs. Alara at first kept to herself, tending a small plot of wildflowers. But slowly, inevitably, the conversations began. A woman with a kind smile offered her a spare trowel. A man with calloused hands showed her how to properly prune a rose bush. They didn't ask about her past or her carefully constructed walls. They simply welcomed her into the present moment, into the shared act of creation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Alara found herself sitting on a bench in the garden, surrounded by the scent of earth and growing things. Anya sat beside her, sharing a thermos of warm tea. "You know," Anya said softly, "when you first started coming to the cafe, you seemed very contained, like you were holding a lot in." Alara nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I was. I thought it was safer that way, to keep everything locked away." "Sometimes," Anya mused, gazing out at the darkening garden, "we build these elaborate fortresses around ourselves, thinking they'll protect us, but sometimes they just end up trapping us inside." Alara thought of her silver apartment, her meticulously ordered life, the silent hum of the city. She thought of the wooden bird on her windowsill, its wings forever spread, forever poised for flight. "I used to believe that," Alara said, her voice barely a whisper, "that the best way to heal was to seal off the wounds, to pretend they didn't exist. to avoid anything that might remind me of the pain. She paused, taking a deep breath. The scent of damp earth and blooming flowers filling her senses. But it wasn't healing. It was a kind of suspended animation. I was alive, but I wasn't truly living. The world outside felt like a threat, and so I built my own world, smaller and smaller, until I was almost invisible, even to myself. Anya reached out and gently squeezed Alara's hand. It takes a lot of courage to step out of that, Alara, to open yourself up again. Alara looked at her friend, truly looked at her, and saw not just a friendly face, but a reflection of her own burgeoning hope. It does, she agreed. But I'm starting to realize that the real strength isn't in building higher walls. It's in finding the courage to let them down, even just a little. It's in allowing yourself to be seen, to be vulnerable. It's in understanding that even though the past might have left scars, those scars don't have to define your future. She had even called Leo. The conversation had been hesitant at first, filled with unspoken apologies and years of silence. But slowly, carefully, the old familiarity had resurfaced, like a forgotten melody. He had listened, truly listened, without judgment. And in that listening, Alara had felt a crack in another one of her carefully constructed walls. She still had moments, of course, moments when the old fear would resurface, when the shadows of the past would lengthen. But now, she had tools. She had the scent of coffee and cinnamon, the gentle hum of conversation in the cafe. She had the feel of rich earth beneath her fingers, the vibrant colors of the community garden. She had Anya's warm smile and the rekindled friendship with Leo. She had learned to recognize the subtle tremors, the whispers of old wounds, and instead of retreating, she was learning to lean into them, to understand them, to allow them to be part of her story, rather than the whole story. She had learned that true strength wasn't found in the absence of pain, but in the presence of connection. It wasn't in the perfect order of her apartment, but in the messy, unpredictable beauty of shared experience. It wasn't in being an island, but in building bridges. And the wooden bird? It still sat on her windowsill, but now it seemed to look out at the bustling, vibrant street below, its obsidian eyes gleaming with a different kind of knowing. Its wings, once a symbol of solitary aspiration, now seemed to represent a readiness to soar, not alone, but alongside others. Alara understood now, with a clarity that resonated deep within her bones, that the silent, silver city she had inhabited for so long, the one where everyone moved in parallel, never truly intersecting, was a carefully constructed illusion. It was a fortress built not just of stone and steel, but of fear and the mistaken belief that safety lay in separation. Alara's journey reminds us that the human spirit, though capable of immense resilience in the face of adversity, thrives not in isolation, but in the rich tapestry of shared experience. It teaches us that sometimes the greatest act of courage is not to stand alone, but to reach out, to connect, to allow the warmth of another human presence to penetrate the carefully constructed walls we build around ourselves. Her story is a testament to the profound and often overlooked power of human connection, the subtle yet transformative magic that unfolds when we dare to step out of our own carefully curated worlds and into the messy, beautiful, and utterly essential embrace of community. It's in these shared spaces, in these gentle acts of reaching out and being reached, that we truly begin to heal, to grow, and to discover the fullness of our own humanity. And in Alara's case, she finally understood that the long journey she had taken, the one from the solitary silver towers to the vibrant community garden, was her path to breaking free from the profound and often debilitating state of social isolation. If you've enjoyed this episode, please visit our website at des-zacakes.com. Thanks for joining me on Unfiltered Reflection. Until next time, be kind to yourself, keep exploring, and remember, you are worthy, you are seen, and you are love.